Hello everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today for the Back to Office team planning webinar. My name is Sophie and I'm from the marketing team here at Dassault Systèmes. Today during the webinar, Psychic Show APAC Sales Director DELMIA will be discussing how APAC companies can schedule their office reopening while taking into account of business goals, governmental rules, workspace restriction, and employees' preferences. Jason Yo, DELMIA Industry Process Consultant, Dassault Systèmes, will deep dive and showcase different examples of how our solution can negate these challenges. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your control panel, and I will bring them up during the presentation and we'll have time for the question at the end. Now we'll go further and we'll turn the time over to Saikit.
Thanks, Sophie. Hi, good morning. This is Saikit from the Dassault Systèmes. So as we move around, the pandemic cases has subsided in many of the cities around us. So we are slowly talking about reopening businesses. So of course, some cities are open, let's say, have opened faster than the others. But one of the common challenges as business owners, as a manager, myself included, is how do we restart? So in restarting, there are many things that we need to consider. How fast do we restart? What are the rules? So there are many rules that we need to adhere to. There will be a government imposed SOP. And for certain organizations, there will be rules that are imposed or let's say requested by the unions that we need to adhere to. These are part of the new normal that we are looking at. But how do we actually plan the resources? Because at the same time, we need to look into the capacity restrictions as a safety precaution for the sanitary constraints in the common areas, for example, like toilets and pantries. We also need to look into the restrictions at the floor level, at the site level, or even at the room level when it comes to reopening our offices. At the same time, we also need to look into the safety of our employees. How do they commute? How do they come to office? Do they need to travel using the in the crowded trains? Do they need to stay home because of, let's say, some of their loved ones is at home and with health risks that they need to better stay home to minimize the risks? And for some of us, we need to manage, let's say, a team. For some of us, we need to manage hundreds of people, and some of us, we are talking about thousands. All this combined together will form a very complex challenge when it comes to how to plan or how to decide what will be the who will be the optimal group of people that can return to office in a safe and confident manner. That is the challenge that we are looking at today. So essentially, these are different business priorities that we need to carefully consider while making the plan. So people are among the most important, if not the most important assets in most of our operations. And let's say their safety is at stake, and therefore this planning to come back to office or how to revamp the operation, to ramp up the operation, demands of transparent process and open process that actually takes care of their constraints, and while at the same time create a plan that is following the government rules in order to build up the confidence level for all the stakeholders. And essentially, these demands a consistent and transparent decision-making framework in order to take care of the needs of all the stakeholders, as well as to be able to respond to disruptions as and when it happens. By using our experience in different business operations planning, And let's say in the past project that we have demonstrated our capabilities to custom fit for certain, let's say for certain unit constraints, particularly for certain projects that we have done. From Dassault system, we use the back to office planning in order to plan our office to restart the operations. And today, we would like to share with you our experience in how we do this plan and how we implement these solutions worldwide, especially in Asia. And this is another example of how, let's say, DS solutions, how we demonstrated Dassault system code solutions can be quickly deployed to solve day-to-day business challenges. So this is an overview of the back-to-office planning. So there are three components. First, at the site level or at the office level, so there would be a centralized planning to determine the capacity plan, considering the overall team size, overall office populations, as well as in the current situation, how do we want to replan the office to restart. So for example, in the current case, we are looking into opening the offices in phases. For example, 25%, 50%, then going to 100%. And then this information then flows into the team level, where team managers will need to fine-tune the plan because let's say the team manager would be equipped with the right level of knowledge of the team capacity workload, individual workload, project progress, individual preferences, as well as the, let's say, certain restrictions that let's say certain individuals, team members may have. And then at the employee level, employees are empowered to put in their preferences, as well as restrictions, let's say, for on a week-to-week basis. So here's a more detailed level. So at the site level on the left, here is what you can see. The capacity master plan is created. It can be created at the site level, at the floor level, or even at the meeting room level, where certain, let's say, meeting rooms can be prioritized. Basically, it is about balancing the demands for the office space, as well as to look into look after the office space sanitary constraints. And then this information flows into the team level, where the team is, let's say the team manager is looking into each of the team members. And by looking into the capacity master plan, trying to look into the, taking into the account the local team progress, as well as the employee-specific information to create a team roster on a week-to-week basis, on a day-to-day basis. And this team level planning goes hand in hand with the employee portal, where the employees would be able to put in their employee-specific information and to request for changes as and when disruptions take place. Let's go into the site level focus. So the site level, the key player here would be the site manager or office manager and the senior management. So this is where the site manager would be able to import the data for all the employees and to create the capacity restrictions into the capacity plan, trying to consider the overall goal. So in this case, like we mentioned earlier, it involves opening in phases, because the most important here is to build up the confidence. So we would like to start small. In the case of certain offices for the source system, we actually start with a 25% capacity and slowly ramping it up to 50%. And we are looking this into a planning horizon across several weeks and months for certain offices. The things that we need to consider here are the capacity constraints. For example, let's say in each floor, we can only allow 25%, and that means if a floor can host 100, we are looking into just hosting 25 people every day for the day of the week. We also look into the requirement for overall business. For example, let's say we know at a certain period of time, for example, at the quarter end, there will be more people who need to come back to office, and we consider all of these business situations in order to impose the correct business requirements into the model. Simulation is a very important part of what we do here at the site level master plan, because it's all about, let's say, what if scenario impact analysis. So in certain cities, we see the number of infections are increasing, and therefore this, let's say, sanitary constraints or health risks has increased. So the management actually discussed and decided that, hey, there is a need to reduce the capacity back to lower level. And what would happen and what will be the impact for the business if it happens to be in a period where we need our teams to be back to office? This is where, let's say, the impact analysis can be done, where scenarios can be created to understand what will be the impact. And if necessary, for example, let's say in this particular example, where we have, for example, the finance team would need to come to office more frequently than the other teams. So in this case, we can actually prioritize the finance team to actually come back to office and given the priority more in comparison to other teams that can potentially make waves for them. It is also possible for the management team to consider some other creative ways in order to minimize the risk. So for example, what if we need to split our teams into two shifts? So where the morning team actually comes to office from 9 until 2 p.m. and then the afternoon shift may potentially start from 12 p.m. To have a 2-hour overlapping hours. In this case, the risk of overcrowding would be minimized to only 2 hours. Whereas, let's say both teams can still see each other and work together for that 2 hours before let's say the morning team actually go home, whereas the afternoon team continues. So again, all of this, let's say, are made possible with the scenario simulation capabilities that we offer. And then once this is decided, this master plan for the week is then flow into the team level, where we look into more into employee scheduling. So this is where team manager, myself included, yeah. So we look into the team. So this is let's say this is the capacity plan for the week. So this is how we want to fine tune the team roster based on the capacity plan. So for example, I will have knowledge to understand, okay, which team, as a team manager, you know probably which team would have which team member would have a more busy workload for the week, which project is currently behind schedule, which task requires more attention. And at the same time, you would receive information from your employees, from the team members, how the capacity plan looks like. So for example, there will be an employee that actually says, okay, so the schools are still not yet open, and I have some young ones at home, and therefore it is necessary for me to continue to work from home for at least for the first half of next week. Then with all of this knowledge, this is where the team manager can fine tune the team level employee roster. And some of the business questions that is covered at the team level planning, for example, like, can we bring the team to for a team meeting together in the office next week? So definitely that can be made possible with the team level scheduling. And then in case of a team alert, red alert of a customer, or let's say certain project behind schedule that needs to deal next week, so all of this can be prioritized over other tasks. At the employee level, employees are provided web portals or apps on the mobile devices. These web portals or apps is, let's say, aimed at provide the plan, to communicate the plan. so that there won't be a need for any phone calls or emails or messages while communicating. And there won't be, let's say, some of our officers has experienced that before the deployment of the solutions, they need to rely on Excel to communicate the plan. And there always will be problems where whose Excel is more updated and whose Excel is, let's say, has some less than complete information there. So by the deployment of this model, we ensure that this communication is done very clearly via the apps. There won't be any needs for any manual communications. At the same time, from the employees, all the requests for changes, all the preferences and restrictions are shared from the web portal or the apps to the team managers so that the adjustments can be done. So some of the questions that we are able to answer would be, let's say, the kind of disruptions that you see here in the slides. In terms of let's say putting these solutions into work. So basically, it's a rolling. It's done every week, once in a week, where first of all the site manager would need to revise the overall capacity plan, and in case of a certain new situation, then the capacity plan for certain site or certain floor or certain room will have to be adjusted. And then this plan is then communicated to the team level, where the team managers revise the plan based on the updated project progress, based on the updated employee preferences, and communicate to the plan to the employees via the mobile applications. One of the questions that we are always ask ourselves while working on this deployment is why Quintic? While we may not necessarily be the specialists in facility management, we do have a lot of experience where we help our customers to manage their workforce in the, let's say, in their respective facilities, utilizing their facilities and equipment, where the workforce is the core assets, and there were a lot of custom fit requirements. In this case, the custom fit requirements that we need to take care of would be the unique capacity constraints, because each office would have their unique constraints in this case. And also, let's say our capability for a very fast deployment where all our solutions are deployed within weeks to ensure that these systems can be used to solve our day-to-day business challenges. In this case, to restart our office. Next, Jason would show you how this solution works in practice. Over to you, Jason.
Hey, thank you, Saikit, for explaining, setting up the context that we are talking about in the workforce return to office and reoccupancy. Today, what I would like to share is a case study of what we did here in Dassault system to get back to the new normal, to bring our workforce back into the workspace at a slow capacity, and to be able to first use, because we like to use our solutions before we advocate the use of our solutions, so we prove ourselves that we are able to make value out of this solution. And when we first got the green light in multiple countries to return to office, what were the criteria that we thought about? What was the factors that we consider were important in how we come back to office? And there are different cultures and different countries that we do this, and the factors are slightly a little bit different based on cultural reasons, regulations, and so on. But the few success factors that we considered in this slide here, you can see, and the first one that we thought about was that we are a very people-oriented company, and it goes a long way to be thoughtful in this perspective as a business. And because of that, we also want to involve our employees, building managers, and the rest of the community in this process of returning to office. We also believe that getting this collaboration in the process is going to be what gives us the commitment that we need to execute the plan flawlessly. And let me jump to the application and show you what that means in a demo. And here, what you see is the Quintic solution for site level planning that Saikit was explaining earlier today. And as you can see here, we have information coming from our building managers. And in this example, we use only a small office of 3 floors. So we have on the left of the screen 18th floor, 24th floor, and 25th floor. And for each of these floors, we have 2 sections of the offices. East and west offices, although we could really just segment the floor into more areas, but in this example, we're going to keep it simple. We can see the capacities that has been set by regulations, either by the strata management of the building or by the government, or a mixture of both of these regulations that we have to adhere to. And we have a capacity, it says here, of 50 per day on the east office, 50 per day on the west office. And a total for the entire floor, it would be a smaller amount than the sum of 50 plus 50, which is 100, but 80. So we can have a total of 80 people on the floor distributed between the east and west offices. And if we also go to the next view here, that in the application, it shows us the information that we collaboratively gathered from our employees. And we do this using a questionnaire. And this information is brought into the application through an import process, and you can see clearly the color codes that give us a high-level view of how each individual employee responds to this questionnaire. And this information that we gather can be received on a weekly basis in some occasions, and sometimes in a day-to-day basis, everyday schedule preferences. And if you can see the red cells on this list here really indicates that the employee does not want to come back to office. They, for various reasons, don't want to be in office on that day, don't think it will be safe to be in office on that day, and so on. So this is a general preference that the employee have with respect to coming back to office. There are also more criteria that we put in. We put up to 5 criteria as an example. There's no limitation in how many you can decide for your specific business. But what we did was we put, among other criteria, these 5, whether the employee is able to work at home because he or she has good internet, has good workplace that is sufficient to perform their role without being restricted in what they deliver to the business. We also talked about safety reasons, like usage of public transportation. Do you use public transportation to get to work? If yes, then we want to know that so that we can take this factor and consider it when we are trying to create our reopening plan. And if, of course, if you're taking public transportation, we don't want you to come if possible, because that will incur risk. And also, if you have family members who are vulnerable, then we also try not to get you in office. So of course, the data can be imported, they can be edited in the plan as well, and can be used subsequently in the planning process. The next success factor that we looked at was how fast and accurate can we create this plan, and why is this important? Because policies that the government has set up, the strata management of the building has set up, what employees believe is really something that can change. It's a living input, and this changes. It is important that we are going to be able to manage these disruptions as these changes come in. The virus, the pandemic might be okay today, but tomorrow we might see another increase in cases, maybe like 50% increase in cases, and that will completely change the game that we're dealing with. And having this fast and accurate system that is able to provide us a way to respond in a timely manner against these disruptions means a lot. It means a lot to us that we feel comfortable and ready to handle these changes, these disruptions that come along. And going back to the application, we can see in the planning screen that we have a system that gives us this ability to look at the KPIs, and the KPI dashboard you see on the top of the screen is really a live update KPI. It gives us real-time tracking on what is the average occupancy of people in this current plan, what are our targets, and how well are we achieving these targets. We talked about number of cases where employee with vulnerable family members are forced to come to office. We talk about the amount of people that are coming to office against their desire, using public transportation and so on. And if we are going to be making any changes to the plans, as I mentioned, in real time, these KPI dashboards will be updated. So it gives us the ability to intuitively make changes to the plan, see how that works out. And as Saikit also mentioned, that if there is a pandemic and we want to, instead of setting our targets to be 75% on the third week of planning, the diagram here shows the planning, by the way. If we want to say that our original targets are 75% for week 3, but seeing that the pandemic has gotten worse instead of better, unfortunately, we will need to be changing these targets to a lower value for safety reasons. And we can easily do that by choosing the targets. This is a list of targets, and in this list, I'm selecting a particular one for 18th floor on week 3, and my target is 75%. I'm going to be changing it to 50% because it's no longer that safe to come to return fully to office. So I changed the targets, and I can quickly adapt my plans and re-optimize my plans by clicking on the optimization button and run it. And the system reconsiders the targets, balances this target, and make a trade-off with the KPIs and the information, and directly updates the dashboard to give us the most recent plans, the most updated plans with this criteria in place. So this combination of dashboards and the ability to rebuild our plans in a very swift and agile way gives us that flexibility that we wanted. So the third criteria that was really important to us was that we understand that the different departments within our company have very different planning dynamics, and we are all trying to hit generally the KPIs that I have shown you as a general policy level, but different departments also have very different human dynamics. We know that managerial roles require a little bit more face-to-face with their employees. Maybe the programmers and might not need so much face-to-face time except for project meetings and so on. And these are really information that the individual departments, team managers, they know best in how to manage their respective organizations. And running one single optimization with one single KPI needs to be balanced with a very human approach to planning. And this human approach to planning introduces what we call this soft knowledge into the planning process that the team managers contribute. So going back to the application, I'm going to show you what that is. And you see in this application that although the reoccupancy numbers are by location on the screen, within the details of the application, we have individuals, employees, and we know their roles in the business, and we are also going to be able to visualize how many people from which role are going to be reporting on to office on which day. And this screen shows us with a color code that which days are we having less people of what role, and which days are we having more people of what role. And also, as an example, if we are going to be saying that on the dates of 3rd August, we will need a little bit more finance people coming in because we are doing a month-end closing for July. We can look at it and say, okay, I don't like this number 3 here, and I need this number to be higher. I need 10 people to come in, and I can just type here that I need 10 people, and what the system can do here is that it sets that as a target for the role, and it updates the plan with support from the mathematical program that's running at the back, and it tells us the best way to achieve that while still observing the KPIs that we have set up here. So we key in 10 into this list, and hit enter, and the system updates the plan and says that now you're forcing one employee who has vulnerability in the family to come to office in order to hit this target. Some increase in the KPIs of some people not wanting to come to office, but we ask them to come anyway, and that's important. So that's how it affects our plan, and by making these updates here. And let me go back to the slides. And the fourth criteria that we put in here is that especially when dealing with matrix organizations like Dassault System, we have people reporting to verticals and horizontals, and the structure of the organization requires a discussion in who do we need to come to office. The team managers, the project managers, functional groups do want to know how their respective organizations are being planned. And sometimes there are gray areas as we try to consider, are we taking into account the business needs? Are we taking into account the safety needs? Are we considering our customers' best interest in this planning? And these are questions that if we are not going to be having clear answers to them, it will be rather gray, and discussions need to happen to make the right decisions. Considering our business priorities and so on. Right? Considering our business priorities, and what are the risks, what are the rewards, is our long-term and short-term processes going to be able to do that. So I'm going to switch again to the application and give you an idea on how we do that. So we're going to go to the scenario manager, and here what we can see is that the plan that we have worked on right now, is has these KPIs, and now instead of seeing them on a dashboard, we are seeing them on a chart. And what we're trying to do here is to create an alternative plan. And why would we do that? Because the news has told us that the pandemic has gotten worse, and now public transportations are at risk. And looking at this plan, we are still having cases where we use public transportation. So what I want to do right now is I want to create an alternative schedule that places more importance on the usage of public transportation and how it should be avoided. So I will create a copy of this plan and say avoid public transport. Click OK. And what the system does is it creates a full copy of this plan, and we will see that it will have the exact same KPIs. And then we will make one change to this plan, which is to consider public transport in a more serious way. And we will run the optimizer again with this in mind and compare the plans. And with that, we are going to be able to make decisions, data-driven decisions, and healthy discussion in a very data-driven way. We will say we want to re-optimize and choose a different strategy to prioritize public transportation and run the optimization. And the difference between the strategies is, as you can see here, the strategy involves weights, and the weights that we are using for public transportation is 15, which is higher than what we have in the other strategy. And if I want to have a look at the KPIs and how that works out, I can select both of these plans, and I can see on the dashboard now that the new plan, which is the yellow one, baseline avoiding public transportation, is now 0, because I have increased the priority of this to my business, and the optimizer has now chosen to have more people off-site without good internet, while putting more importance in public transportation. And this is just an example of what kind of adjustments we can make to the plan and what kind of discussions that can happen as a result of that. And finally, when we talk about living plans, what we want to see is that we want to be able to have a plan, but also to have this plan be adaptable to the changing situation, and to be able to communicate this plan to employees, to get their feedback, and to continue working on the plan as we progress more and more closer towards the date of that we're trying to get in office. And from this application that we have created all the plans, we can see now that the plans are in full detail, and each of these employees here have a clear idea of which days they want or they should be in office, they're expected to be in office, which days they are expected to work from home. And this allows us to communicate and be aligned. If they cannot make it on those days, they can give us feedback on that. And this is the example that we have internally. Of course, if you have if on your end you have employees that are contract basis, pay per hour basis, that's gonna mean you can also use the same concept on trying to cover employees' costs. And of course, the plan right here, we can be communicating this plan to the employees directly, or we can be using this to go to a team level planning, where we can look into more details on the soft knowledge and where required. So if it goes to a team level planning process where we do further adjustments, how the process will generally look like is that we have communicated this plan to the team managers, and the team managers will work with their team and see who needs support on which day, who needs to come into office together because they're working on a project, which employee needs some face-to-face support, and these adjustments, this soft knowledge is going to be possible to be incorporated into the plan and a team level planning process. 1 week before they go on site. So how the team level planning looks like is that we have a little bit more detail, as you can see here, as compared to the site level plan. We can see that the working hours are now visible. We can see that we have more direct control, and we can drag and drop, see who's on leave, which preferences are on which day, and we can drag and drop this the plan by to adjust it. We can swap presences between two employees if one employee is cannot make it and one employee needs to come to office and they actually need to swap this requirement. If they call in sick and they cannot use the space and another employee wants to use the space, we can also adjust the plan in a very intuitive drag and drop way, and that really helps the entire process. And to make sure that we have access, or all employees have access to the schedule, to the latest updates in the schedule, we also have the mobile app that they are going to be able to receive notifications and say, oh, yep, your schedule has changed slightly based on your request. And by the way, yes, they can put in their requests as well. They can put in their request and say, I would like to swap a shift or swap a working day in office. I would like to change my preferences. I would like to say that I am sick through the mobile app, and that's also possible. So all this feedback on which days I'm coming to office, which days I'm not coming, and why, this all can be incorporated into the system through the mobile app. And finally, when the requests come into the system, the team manager can take a very can look into the request, either respond to it positively or give the employee a call to say, okay, how are we going to work this out? That's all possible, and whatever decisions that are made from there can be incorporated directly into the plan. And that summarizes the demo. And Saikit, would it be possible for you to run through the summary?
Yes, thanks, Jason. So through the demo, well, I think what we have just seen is how the site level planning can be done, how let's say what are the critical success factors that we need to put in place in order for the site level plan to work. Then Jason also explained how the team level planning can be put into place. So this process is repeated on a week-to-week basis, where of course we can create a plan far in future. That is, and when things changes, there is a need to revise the plan. Then we will revise the plan and then publish the plan on a particular day on a weekly basis, so that all the employees would be notified of how their capacity look like, or how their back to office plan looks like for the subsequent weeks. So that concludes our presentation for the day. Over to you, Sophie.
Yep. Thank you for the summary wrap-up, Saikit. So now we'll go ahead and take some time for the questions. Just as a reminder, please make sure to type your question into the question box in your control panel. It looks like we already have a question. So we have a question from Steven that say, hi, may I know what optimization algorithm is the engine based on, and how does it handle fuzzy data?
Thanks, Steven. So first of all, to explain the first part of the question, so what kind of optimizer do we use? So at the site level and the team level, we use different optimization engine. Both of them, let's say we built our own optimization engine, and let's say both of them uses linear mathematics programming. But based on our experience, let's say there is no instance of fuzzy data occurrence. Because let's say basically it's all about whether the employees can come to office or not. So they can put in their preferences, they can put in their restrictions, and then the decision is whether they should come to office or not. There are situations where in certain offices, we also need to plan whether the sales need to go on to customer site, whether the engineers will need to go to customer site for the projects. But again, those are pretty definitive data. There is no occurrence on the fuzzy data occurrence as far as we understand. But happy to explore more if you have such a situation.
Thanks, Sakit. There's another question from John. My company is looking for a planning solution that is able to comply with labor rules. For example, an employee must take a break after X hour, or an employee cannot work X shifts type consecutively, or an employee has to have a right skill to be able to work on a particular shift. Can your planning solution be able to take all that into consideration?
Let me take that question. So that at least just by listening to the question, it sounds like this is more of something that you want to consider when you do day-to-day scheduling. For example, it sounds like you probably have someone who is scheduled to work on the night shift on a particular Monday, and then you don't want that person to work on the immediate morning shift on Tuesday. So this kind of sequencing or rostering can be considered at team level planning. So yes, it can be done.
Thank you, Sakit. Another question from Jacob. How do we know if the optimizer is fair to all employees?
Wow. Let me try to answer the question again. So it's actually a good question. So in the deployment of the solution in certain offices, this question actually came. We interpret the fairness after talking to our colleague who actually asked such a question. Well, basically the concern was more to well, why I see some people come to office less and I need to come to office more. That kind of question did happen. And how we address it is like, okay, so first of all, we show them the plan on a week-to-week basis. And then and let's say in this case, the colleague was able to see how it comes from. But at least from the system design perspective, or from the solution perspective, for example, yeah, the question that triggered the incident that triggered this question was actually come to the fact where we need to come back to office 50%. Well, we don't plan for half a day in certain offices. So we plan for, okay, maybe this week you go 2 days a week, and next week you go 3 days a week. So all of these rules can be modeled into the solution, and then we make sure that the results are reasonable to in this case our colleague in question, so they are able to see what actually happened and what are the considerations done. So all of these are done in a very transparent manner, and that's how we address the concern.
All right, thank you, Sakit. It looks like we have covered all our questions from the participant. Jason, Sakit, is there anything else you want to cover before a wrap up?
Yeah. So I don't think any of us would have a very solid idea on when this will go away and when we can fully resume normal. So at least in the foreseeable future, I think disruptions and unpredictability will be the new normal. But at least with a solution in place, we hope to provide you a very transparent and open and consistent decision-making mechanism, and with a tool that supports you to do that, so that when the unexpected hits, at least what we can do is to consider all the options and find the most optimal one to keep our office running, and most importantly, to keep our people safe and healthy. That's all.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. And should you have any question, feel free to reach out to Psychit or Jason. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.